Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited to present our newest project, Quartet in Milton, to everybody. It's something, we've been working on for a number of months now with the amazing team at Goldfield Development Group, a national property developer, with a diverse range of experience and projects across their entire portfolio. So today I'm really excited to sort of take everyone through this phenomenal project. I know there's a lot of friendly faces who have joined us. I'm obviously looking forward to chatting to you and seeing you all in person. Now, I would typically be in the display of the project, but we are under construction. So the display has started work and will not complete for another probably about 6-7 weeks. But I'm actually going to get a lot of you who are on today for a sneak preview in the coming weeks to see the space that we're putting together, which is really special. So it looks like we've got 70 people on right now. So I'm going to get underway and take everyone through Quartet in Milton. So before we get into the project, I really want to set the scene and frame up the marketplace. Australia is in such a fortunate place right now. We have the world's fastest growing population. And research has shown that the next forecast for us, with our population growth up until 2030, we are going to be the most in-demand country in the globe. I think you compare us with other developed nations and where we sit, this is a phenomenal sort of look to see where our country is going. It just shows the demand. We're consistently seeing now over the last 5 to 10 years, the number of millionaires that migrate around the world, and Australia is top 3 in the countries where millionaires want to migrate. And this creates that wealth effect of people bringing in that capital to our country. And obviously what they first want to do is park it within great real estate assets and great property assets that we're going to talk about today, which we're all the beneficiaries of. So the thing that we've all talked about a lot recently, whether it's migration and population growth or interest rates, I think all we can see is things are getting better. If you look in the top left-hand side of your screen, we've got the big 4 banks and what their predictions for the interest rates are, with 3 out of the 4 saying we're going to be at 3.35% by the end of the year, which you can see on the bottom left-hand graph of what that looks like, with the red lines all the way down. We've already had 2 rate cuts, one this week and one at the start of the year, and it looks like we're in for another 3 by the end of the year. But what does that mean to buyers? What does that mean to us? What does that mean to purchasers? So if you have, a couple of investment properties, your owner-occupier property, you might have $1 to $1.2 million in loans or debt. And what that means, every single time there's a 0.25% rate cut, you're saving around $2,000 a year. Which is fantastic. If we've got 3 more rate cuts, that means there's another $6,000 a year these people are saving, which, not only helps them, I guess, the ability to make them feel, cost of ease, cost of pressures, but also they can then go out and borrow more because rents are only going up. Rents are not going backwards. So with rents going up and then also interest rates coming down, the ability to then borrow more money is going to create this huge effect in the market. And if you look at all those interest rate cuts forecast on the bottom left-hand side of your screen before the end of the year, it's setting up for a huge end of 2025, which I think we can all get ready for right now. Now, we were talking about migration globally, and obviously Australia is #1 for a lot of people where they want to move to. But then you look within Australia, and the state of Queensland, my favorite state, my home state, has had in the last 12 months, 31,000 people migrate into Queensland. Queensland is consistently seeing not only 31,000 people from the southern states like New South Wales and other states migrate into here, but we're also seeing then globally now the international migration. So our population then with birth rates, we're actually growing at close to 70,000 people here. And a lot of that is in with Southeast Queensland and the metropolitan area of Brisbane. And if you equate that to apartment buildings and say, 100 apartments in each building, that means we roughly need close to around I think it's 2,000 apartment buildings being built here, which is huge. Now, with the rate of change of dwelling values, what we're seeing here is that this is the first year Brisbane unit market has outperformed the housing market. Last year, Brisbane did 15.2% in apartment price growth, where the housing market only did 8.6%. Now, that is a drastic change. It's always been the housing market people thought outperformed. Now it's changed the apartment market for the first year. And with the undersupply, that trend is already this year continuing and continuing and continuing. Apartments are the new growth asset within the Brisbane market. And that is due to the undersupply. And this is where buying such a great asset that we're going to talk today at Quartet at Milton is a huge opportunity. Because of the shortfall that we've seen, and you can see the numbers here on screen, you know, we consistently have a demand average of what we need in Brisbane in the red dotted line of about 7,000 apartments a year. With that population migration of people moving here, we need 7,000 apartments built, and it's just not happening. If you look since sort of COVID and there's been a shortfall, we haven't even reached 5,000, the 10-year demand average. The last year we did that was in 2019. So we've had a 24,000 apartment shortfall that has not been caught up with. That shortfall is putting pressure on our rental market, and it is also putting pressure on our pricing market, which is why we saw that 15% growth. But if you look at the forecast this year and 2026, we're down at circa 1,200 apartments, 1,000 apartments coming through in the market in Brisbane. Now, what this is a chronic undersupply. And so the continued pressure on that apartment market is just going one way, where there is not that pressure on the housing market, which is why we're seeing apartments now outperforming houses. So for everyone buying over the next sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to get those amazing benefits from that undersupply that's happening across Brisbane. Now, I really want to go. I've gone global, I've gone national, I've gone Queensland, I've gone Brisbane. I want to drill into the postcode, the 4064. This is the postcode that encompasses 3 suburbs, Paddington, Rosalie, and Milton. This postcode is one of the most prestigious postcodes in Queensland. If you think about Brisbane, you think there's top 3 suburbs. Those suburbs are New Farm, Hamilton Ascot, and Paddington. Those 3 suburbs consistently trade and hold the house price record in Brisbane. And within those suburbs, we see the benefit of being close with Milton, Rosalie, and being able to benefit from people who want to stay in the area of Paddington, but they don't want to live in a house anymore. And Paddington has near 0 apartments. There is no apartments in Paddington. And this is why the benefit of that is Milton. It is basically the apartments of Paddington. So for a lot of people, what I've also got on screen is the number of actual secondhand property listings on the market the last decade. And as you can see, 2017, 2018, there was consistently around 150, 170 properties for sale. And you can see the days on market, over 180 days, there was a number of properties that sat there like that. Now you fast forward past 2020, past 2025, we are at 75,000. We are half the number of properties for sale in that postcode. And if you look at the days on market, the red line, it is less than half. It's about 25% or 1/3 of what it was. So this is showing that pressure on price going up because there's not enough properties to buy. There's a huge demand of people wanting to get into the suburb. And then that's creating that lower days on market. And that's really the opportunity looking at off the plan today. And the big one, I mean, look, I could talk about this till the cows come home, the 2032 Olympics. We are going to be on the global stage. We are going to have 3 billion people around the world looking at us. I love this shot because it shows the new Olympic Stadium at Victoria Park. You can see Suncorp Stadium in the foreground, and you can actually see Quartet, literally, look, couple of minutes walk from Suncorp Stadium there. We're a 30-minute walk from the new Olympic opening games stadium. Then you've got the new aquatic centre below in Spring Hill. The Olympic Games is going to create over 130 new jobs. You know, it's a $7 billion budget being spent. All property forecasters are basically saying Brisbane's going to do similar to Sydney in the key locations, which means Brisbane's going to double in those locations from price growth. But the one thing to really take note of this is beyond the Olympics as well. One thing that a lot of people haven't picked up, and if you zoom in and you look really closely at the Olympic Games Stadium, they've actually got AFL posts and the AFL markings on the stadium, because the talk is now Wollongabba Stadium is going to be pulled down after the Olympics, and then you're going to have the Victoria Park, the new home of the Brisbane Lions. You then have Suncorp, the home of the Brisbane Broncos. And if you think about those other stadiums and suburbs around those stadiums in our major capital cities, let's take the MCG. You have East Melbourne, Collingwood, amazing suburbs, huge benefits of the MCG and all the events they hold, and the price and the premium that those achieve. You have the Sydney Cricket Ground. Brendan and I were discussing. There's Paddington that's also in Sydney, right near the Sydney Cricket Ground. You also have Darlinghurst and Redfern. The price of those suburbs are absolute premium in comparison. And we are going to see the same effect here in Milton and for Brisbane. So this is where it's such an amazing opportunity looking at where it's going. But thinking through that Olympic Games effect and looking through that case study of Sydney that we talked about, you know, we've had Tokyo, we've had Paris recently, Los Angeles is just around the corner, and then Brisbane. What you can see below is what did it do for Sydney in the 2000s? So in the 2000s, Sydney was relatively known around the world, but the 5 years prior to the games got announced, we had 5% annual price growth in the Sydney property market. The games were announced, and then 5 years leading up to the games, which is, you know, where we are right now, we are literally at the start of our 5-year journey, our 5-year run to the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. Sydney grew at 9.5% property price per annum. The games were held in 2000. Post-games, Sydney prices grew at 12.5% per annum. This is the story that everyone sees. Key locations in Brisbane are going to mirror what Sydney did. This is the opportunity, Brisbane stepping up to the global stage. I think at the Paris Olympics recently, they surveyed people on the street. They took 100 people each day of the Olympics, and they asked them, do you know where the next Olympics Games is? And I think, and can you point to it on a map? Only out of 100 people each day, on average, 44 people could call it Los Angeles and point to where it is on a map. Now, with Brisbane, they asked, do you know where the following games is after that? And you know where that is on a map? And guess how many people could actually pick that each day when they asked them? On average, it was 3. So this shows you that only 3 people out of 100 may know where Brisbane is. Now, I think by the time, you know, in a couple of years when we've got Los Angeles 2028, that number, when people do that exact same test on the ground, I think that's going to be more like 23. And obviously, by the time we're hosting the games, you know, everyone's going to know Brisbane around the world. So this effect is really game changing, something that most of us have not seen before in our lifetime. And what that did for exact price, if you look at this, is median dwelling prices over the course of that time period of Sydney pre-Olympics, and then Brisbane at the same time, and then Sydney during the Olympics in 2000. So once the games were announced in 1993, Brisbane and Sydney were really close in its pricing. We were maybe 20-25% difference in our housing, in our median pricing. And then Sydney took off in the lead up to the games, and Sydney was double Brisbane. And then it stayed there consistently till now, really. But what's really interesting when you drill into this, you know, today, Sydney house prices are roughly double Brisbane, but what is Sydney, you know, water worth? And we look at, with the water views we have here on Milton being a riverside suburb, you know, what does that mean for us? Now, in Sydney, we have $200 million houses on the water, whereas in Brisbane, our most expensive houses on the water are only $22 million. So Sydney is nearly 10 times the premium prices in the housing market. Now, when it comes to apartments, You know, Brisbane, we've got $25,000 a square meter apartment prices on the water. What you've got in Sydney is $100,000 a square meter apartment prices on the water. Even more than that, $110,000, $120,000 recent sales. And I do know of, I just got told last week, there has been a contracted $140,000 a square meter apartment sale in Sydney just last month. It will come out in the news soon, but this is the value you can see for premium, where you can see water, amazing real estate, and this trend is not going to change. So let's look at inner Brisbane. Let's look where we are in Quartet. You can see us on the map here. You can see Suncorp Stadium. You can see where the city is here. Quartet is perfectly positioned. You can see the dotted line of, you know, where it is from a walking distance in that 15, 20-minute neighborhood. You can walk to the city. You can walk to, you know, South Brisbane. You've got all these amazing cultural precincts on your doorstep. It is something that is truly, truly special. So what I did is I analyzed the whole of the Brisbane River and I looked at all the other projects within that inner west pocket. And what was amazing looking at that is majority of the projects from Toowong to West End to the CBD, they're all priced typically between $4 and $11 million. Majority 3 and 4 bedroom style property. And a lot of that, there is only a couple of new projects available. A couple on screen on the right-hand side, you can see their Arc residences in Toowong, right next to the Monarch building on Coronation Drive. They're selling 3 bedrooms there at circa $5 million. You know, our 3 bedrooms in Quartet, you know, I'm going to go through the pricing, but you're going to see presents such amazing value. Another new one is the Joe Adset building in Toowong. I recently was sitting next to Joe at a lunch and talking to him about what he's delivering there. So he's doing 240 square meter apartments, only 28 of them. And it's not even really on the water. It's sort of set back like we are at Quartet, but it does have water views. But they're going to be starting from $4 to $5 million. So this is just that price discrepancy. And this is where I see just amazing value for what we're presenting here on such a stunning project. So let's go through the details. Quartet, we have 130 apartments, mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We are 9 to 19,000 a square meter with over 1,000 square meters of residential amenity. Developed by Goldfield, obviously national developer, hugely recognized. We're going to hear from the team in a little bit, and they're going to tell you a little bit more about, you know, their business and sort of their approach and philosophy to development. But just true design aesthetics and making things look stunning and beautiful. And they engage, you know, top of the market architect here with Rothy Lohman, absolute tier 1 in what they design and deliver. So we recently sat down with Marco and Lockie, the founders of Goldfield and managing directors. It was an amazing experience to go through their philosophy as a business, their journey, you know, how they want to sort of, you know, see the future of the Australian property market and the landmarks and legacies they're going to leave behind that I think are going to be unparalleled in, you know, property than what they deliver. And just to look at, you know, what they're doing right now, they are actually an amazing diversified business locating across Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, even Western Australia. They have a $4 billion development pipeline. Their commitment to delivering is something I have never seen before. They understand the challenges of the real estate market more than anyone, and they are so equipped to deliver, you know, the best projects nationally over the course of the next, you know, 5, 10, 15 years. For me, I walked away with such energy and so enthused to see, you know, what they're going to do also in the future with some of their amazing office developments they're doing, some of their residential space as well. But here's a little bit more from the guys and a video we shot with them.
You guys have chosen some of the best design firms in the country, whether it's Rothy Lohman's, here we're working on with the Milton project, Quartet, or even sort of Sarah Stribley, you know, with the upcoming Richmond project. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, why it's so important to choose the right design firm and your approach to working with them?
There's a number of factors. Selfishly, you've got to spend years with these people. and you gravitate towards people that you like. That doesn't mean they're the right people, but again, by luck, design, whatever, experience is probably it. We've found people and consultants that understand the way we work and understand the value that we're trying to bring to our clients, to the purchasers, challenging each other. And I start, this is, it sounds convenient for the camera, it's not. Any marketing person that comes in, I said I had the meeting with Jay, our new marketing manager, last week, but I want things to, there's nothing wrong with the norm if it's sort of working right, but you can't get left behind. And by the time you get left behind on a marketing sense, a floor plan sense, a layout sense, a facade sense, it's too late. By the time you realise that the market's gone leaps and bounds ahead. So it's constantly challenging yourselves. And in these PCG number one topic, first thing on the agenda is innovation. So it's looking for what's next, which probably leads into where we've ventured out into the suburbs, up through New South Wales, up through Brisbane, as to the suburbs of what is the next generation looking for, and the gentrification piece, providing value, but also familiarity and trust around what we're going to deliver, because we've delivered it everywhere in the Eastern Seaboard, but in suburbs that you want to live in.
Also, many buyers won't understand this. It's sometimes 5 years or more from when the first pen's put to paper on a building when it's finished. Yeah. Okay. Think about what's happened in the world over the last 5 years and how trends have changed, and the whole work from home movement. Yeah. The nomadic worker. Yes. Right. So it's a challenge keeping up with changing trends. The best, it touches on my point before, the best consultants have or have the opportunity or resources to commit to effectively R&D, and will study the world and study trends more so typically than smaller firms. Yeah. But then like, to our credit, the client needs to also drive the outcomes. Yeah. Yep. You can't simply just rely on consultants. For them, it's a job. They might be passionate about it, they'll have their brand on it, but you also need to assist in bringing out the best in the consultant.
There's a fine balance in those meetings too, and in the journey of what is value for money, because if given a big enough leash, you'll end up with things that just...
The Burj Khalifa in Milton.
And I think in a world that it is harder and harder and harder to stack projects up, and then it's harder and harder and harder to stand out from the guy who's next or the person who's next to you, it's really going into a window of value for money. You talk about the ethos of what the business is and what our build to sell is, and it's someone walking in thinking that what they're going to buy is worth $1, but you telling them it's 95 cents. Half the battle is done. I know it is for me. If I was to buy something, immediately I feel like that this is more expensive than what you've just told me. So it's getting the whole consultant team to buy in on that, and actually delivering that on pen and paper and getting it out of the ground.
We always have to balance design, desirability outcomes with economics. And that challenge will exist forever. Okay? And that's the art. That's where a good developer does that well.
Balance. I think that art is, where you get someone like you say, Lockie, they're buying on value, and then the value they see is immense when they truly understand what you've crafted and created. And so the price for them, they can sort of understand that, the value exceeds the price.
Spot on. And that's not being cheap. There's a big difference between value and cheap. Mug's game, in my opinion, is being the cheapest. There's no skill in that. And I'm not saying that we're the cheapest, nor should we be. But what I do want to do is stamp out that we offer terrific value for money. And that doesn't just stop when they sign the contract and move in. That, I would like to think, transpires 5 years down the track to the person who buys that, 7 years. They're not losing money; they're actually making money year on year.
Alrighty. I think that sort of, sets the scene in sort of the approach by Goldfields as a developer. So when we look at where Quartet sits, it is an amazing proximity with the CBD, You've got obviously the river coursing through across to South Brisbane Cultural Precinct, West End. You have Toowong Village in behind you. You've got Suncorp Stadium, you've got the Victoria Park Olympic Precinct, you've got Paddington and Rosalie and all the beautiful shops there as well. And then, even the exact location where we are at Quartet with the train line, 300 meters walking from where we are off corner of Manning and McDougall Street. And, my favorite, you've got Park Road in behind. And Park Road, for those of us who remember, I remember going to a few games at Suncorp Stadium as a kid. And, this was 20 years ago. Park Road was actually the premium destination. It was the James Street before James Street. It was so special, and, restaurants were thriving and really great. And I know of actually, with what's happening here at Milton and the regentrification with the Milton markets and everything that's going on, there is actually a few new venues about to start opening up at Park Road. So a few entrepreneurs in the food and beverage and restaurateurs are actually going to be going in, and you're going to see this revival start to happen throughout the whole area, which is super exciting for where we are. And another big one is transport. I mean, I touched on the train line. There's also buses. Another thing that, I did the other day is I actually walked from the site and jumped on the ferry. The Milton Ferry Terminal is absolutely fantastic. It took me to Howard Smith Wharfs in the space of 10 minutes. So just having, I guess, all those multi-nodes of transport within this location is really absolutely special, I think, for the future of, this suburb and how it evolves. Because right now, it hasn't had a lot of activity in the last 5-10 years, but I think with the recent announcement of all the Olympic Stadium and the gentrification that's happening in this inner north pocket, it is going to be the future destination for a lot of new and amazing opportunity. And then when we look at from an architectural side of things, we touched on Rothy Loman. We heard, Lockie and Marco talk about how they approach the design firms and what they've done. And I think they've crafted something absolutely exquisite with these elevated Queenslander style residences in the sky. As you can see, let me show you the internals, because I think when you see what's on offer here, from an architectural standpoint, here's the amenities standpoint. One thing that people always miss is that is a true 25-meter lap pool. So from a health and wellness side of things, that's an amazing space there that, with people sort of, being able to go up there, take a swim in the morning or in the afternoon, it just presents as, just a real lifestyle changer. You've also got sauna featured in there, Zen gardens where they'll have yoga classes on the rooftop. Once or twice a week they're looking at residents lounge and workspace, so kind of like that co-working. If you want to host a meeting, you can book it out through the app and invite sort of friends over if you want to book or host a private dining room a dinner party in the private dining room as well. And then you have a range of barbecue areas and seating areas up there if you want to go up a couple of nights a week, salad, piece of fish, and have a date night with the missus. I couldn't think of a better location to see that as well. Here's some of the views, 25-meter lap pool, stunning outlook to the city. Just so you know, we are also looking at potential upgrades here to make it even better and better. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to have some more coming announcement in the coming weeks on what that's going to look like. But just with the crazy pave, the look and feel up here, it is really that resort style living. You're going to feel like, you're at sort of, a Six Sense or sort of global resort. You can see the W Hotel there in the foreground, and that doesn't even have a 25-meter lap pool. I stayed there recently as a staycation, and the pool itself probably wasn't big enough for the residents there, and that's what presents such amazing here with the size and scale of amenity that's delivered. And then we come into the interiors, and I think you can see here, we'd all be pretty happy with that living and dining room. This is where I say that Queenslander in the sky, and you can see with all the glazing pulled and peeled back and that stunning sort of night sky there, it's just absolutely amazing, sort of the outlook. So you've got the engineered oak flooring as well, beautiful pendant lighting. And then we come to the kitchen. So natural stone kitchen, gas cooktops, pyrolytic ovens, walk-in butler's pantry, all, you know, feature pendant lighting. This is something, you know, we can all expect as absolutely beautiful on completion. It's something, touch and feel, you know, we're going to be really sort of, you know, amazed by when we get to walk through this. And you will actually be able to see it in the flesh in about 8 weeks. We have a full kitchen being built in our display. So I think for those more owner-occupier style buyers, you know, that's a place where they can actually see and feel these beautiful finishes. And then when we get into your bathroom or your ensuite, you know, floor to ceiling height tiling, beautiful LED strip lighting around, which just gives it that dramatic, you know, really high-end feeling all throughout, and the feature tile wall. I think sort of these touches all throughout just give it that absolute premium feel. And then we come to the master. So you've got walk-in wardrobe, you know, great joinery all throughout, built-in bed head. You know, these touches all throughout, just actually with floor to ceiling glass windows, put us in that such high level bracket. It's absolutely amazing. And then when we talked about that Queenslander in the sky, I love this shot because it just shows, you know, Brisbane has such beautiful afternoon breezes. And for me, spending time with friends and family out on a balcony like that is something that is just truly special. So something which, you know, the Rothy Lomans and the Goldfield team collaborating and designing here, I think, you know, is going to be truly astounding for residents on completion. So I wanted to take you through some of the views. What we can see here is the east-facing rooftop view. So you've got at dusk time, city, river, amazing outlooks all through there to District with Suncorp Stadium as well. And then if we kind of go more to the south-facing side, so on that building, you've got river frontage, you've got West End, you can see a bit of South Brisbane, you can also see the suburban Toowong in the distance as well. And then as we go to the west, you've got more of that river glimpse, and then you've got the District, Mount Cootha, suburban views, which are still stunning as well. And then to the north, we're looking more sort of your suburban, a bit of mountains, and you also have Suncorp Stadium and what will be Victoria Park Stadium in the distance as well. And then when we look at the levels, we have a couple of different floor plates throughout the building that provides different product type. So what you can see on screen here is level 18. So we have 3 bedrooms plus multi-purpose rooms, 4 on this plate, some amazing layouts, which I can actually take you through in more detail at a personalized one-on-one meeting, or your sales manager can step you through the light, the aspects for each of the apartments. And this is another floor plate as we come down. This is 7 apartments. So here we have a mixture of more 3 bedrooms, some 2 bedrooms. We also have a 1 bedroom in here as well. So you can see that 01 apartment in the bottom with the Mount Cootha views there, 1607. You have a great, you know, variety of, I guess, floor plate offerings for different purchases and different price points throughout here. And then as we come down to level 10, you know, this is 8 apartments per floor plate. Good mixture, some real variety of 2s, you know, some really unique 2 bedrooms with flexible spaces that I think need a real commentary and going through. And I won't do that on the call today, but one-on-one, I can sit down and take you through each of the individual floor plans, the 2 bedrooms, the 2 bedroom, 1 bathrooms, and how the benefits to each of them work throughout the building. Now, when we look at finishes, we're actually going to have a completed finishes doc that is client friendly. I wanted to show you a sample today on the call, and this is a sample of the finishes that we will have, Miele appliances, European appliances, these kind of, gas cooktops are going to be sort of, amazing for purchases, obviously on completion. And in the display showroom, we'll have all of these as well. Now, I saw in the chat there was some comments. One was on body corporates, one was on rents. We have the rents here on screen, as you can see, furnished and unfurnished. So we're seeing rental returns of about 4 to 5% across the furnished and unfurnished market. However, the thing to understand is we will only be releasing circa 50 properties to the market at this initial stage. We then, with the display completing and starting construction Q3 this year, the remaining 80 properties, we expect local owner occupiers while it's under construction to be purchasing those ones. And we will have a price increase upon the display being complete and construction commencing. I was also comment on body corporates. So we're looking at 3,600 to 6,700 a year. But the benefits of the body corporates, not only do you have phenomenal amenity, not only does that look after the building, we're also integrating mail rooms and mail parcel delivery, as you can see in the image on screen. This is just going to allow residents who love that online shopping. I know my wife does. She probably needs 4 of those with all her deliveries that we get sent each day. But this is where, you know, you can come home, it's secure, it's there for you to pick up, enter your code, and it's all ready to go. Now, finally, you heard Marco actually mentioned the nomadic worker when he was talking about his philosophy of purchases. And so what he's actually allowed us to provide is flexible corporate rental within the building. And so we're looking at what that looks like now with Suncorp Stadium hosting over 30 amazing events a year. You've got the CBD, only 1 train stop away, and you're in the middle of the city. You've obviously got the ferry that you can take to Howard Smith Wharves. We've looked at Milton, and as a flexible corporate rental, what you could achieve. And these, we're getting more finalized amounts, but you know, it's between, you know, it's up to around $2,000 a week you could be achieving on a 2-bedroom apartment, which it just presents amazing opportunity from a rental return side of things, just given it is such an in-demand location with everything that's going on. And you can imagine in the lead up to the Olympics, this is only going to benefit more and more. So in closing, look, the thing I want to talk about is what's so special, and I think the amazing value on this project. You can see on here screen Quartet, and I just wanted to talk about some recent new project penthouses and penthouse sales. You recently had the standard penthouse over in South Brisbane on my left-hand side. That sold for $6.5 million. That represents, you know, amazing value, close to 30,000 a square meter. You've got West Village, they've got penthouses in there from the 7s, and you can see sort of, you know, where that's positioned in relation. You know, it's not on the river, it's not front row, but it does show that sizing. I know Casamia, I've sold a number of properties in there, and they've got a penthouse there, which is $9 million. Traders in Purple, their West End site. They're about to kick off the campaign. That's on the riverfront across from Monarch, and they'll be having penthouses in there that are upwards of $10 million as well. You have Monarch, there's some $8 million penthouses there. I know Arc, someone who I've worked with in Brisbane, I won't name his name, but he actually sold that penthouse at Arc for $14 million. His buyer has since pulled out. I've spoken to him about Quartet. He's like, he might take the whole top floor himself just in the building because of the value that he can get there. And you have One Earl Lane in Toowong. A lot of people may have worked on that project like I did with Azure, and they had some penthouse style product there at $5 million. I think this just shows the inner west value of what is being presented here, and is something that is truly, truly special in the marketplace.